ready to go. Welcome everyone to this ITRL seminar. My name is Albin Engholm. I'm a PhD student here at IKEA. And most welcome to this seminar that's a part of our seminar series that we have every spring. Today we're going to hear about the KTH mobility tool. And we have Jenny here, who is a PhD researcher at Integrated Product Development. And Mia Hesselgren, who's a PhD candidate in Design and Sustainability. So you have already some breakfast, it's great. And if you need it, there's toilets downstairs. I think we're going to have a presentation in 45 minutes, something like that. And we have time for some questions afterwards. Yes, let's get started.
And can we say we also from the project have Martin from the Bilister and sort of Benoit from Renault.
Yeah.
He wasn't engaged in the project, but Cecile was.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, good morning and welcome everyone to this presentation about this KTH mobility pool that is a sustainable mobility solutions for workplaces with light electric vehicles. That we had tested this in 2 workplaces and also developed the system. And my name is Jenny Janhage-Stier and I'm from Integrated Product Development, and I have Mia Hesselgren here as well. That's from Product and Service Design. We are 2 of the researchers in the project, and we have also Liridona Cipriani that couldn't join us today. And the background to this project is that Peter Jören, that's also here from ITRL, he met Nina and Gunilla at the Sustainable Conference, and they were responsible for the sustainable issues at IKEA and Botkyrka municipality. And they had a common issue, and that was that many employees took their private car to work, so big areas around the working places became parking spaces. And that's a very expensive area that could be used for something else. And another problem was also that these employees took their private cars for private errands. And to use a 5 passengers car for just short trips for about 1-2 kilometers was not within these sustainable goals or sustainability policies within these 2 companies. So we wanted to find a new mobility solution that were more sustainable. So Peter, he gathered a lot of competences and people with different perspectives to work on this. And we have some workshops together with Martin from Gröna Bilister, people from Eco Traffic and from Hertz, and also from Seamless. That's they are good in these payments, digital payment solutions, and also of course IKEA and Botkyrka, and a couple of us researchers. So we worked on different solutions, and they tried them in scenario analysis, and at last we agreed in this solution. We decided to use these LEVs, light electric vehicles, and we chose to use Renault's Twizzes. It is a 2 passengers vehicle that has a top speed at 80 kilometers per hour. And it has a driving range from 50 to 80 kilometers depending on driving circumstances, and you fully charge it in 3.5 hours. It has no windows, no locks, and no heating. And to be able to open the car, we used these key cards, as we call it, and it talked also with the hardware and the booking system that also talked to this hardware. And this was also good. This solution was also good for us to get some data, for example, booking data and driving distances and so on. And we also borrowed this booking system from Sunfleet. We just developed the front page, so it was adapted for a KTH mobility pool. We tried to develop an own booking system, but it was too hard to do that, so we decided to borrow their booking system. And we also invented two new type of users that we called caretakers and daytime users. The caretakers that we in Swedish called fodervärdar, they brought the vehicle home after working days, and at home they could use it as much as they wanted during evenings and weekends. And in return, they should fully charge this vehicle and bring it back to the working day the day after. And we also wanted them to do some easy maintenance as well. And also have the day users that use these vehicles like normal pool users during working days. And they named the pool the KTH Mobility Pool, and the expectations was that this should reduce the use of private cars. We hope that more people should leave their private car at home. And we also would like to maximize the utility of resources. And that's because this vehicle should also be used not during daytime, but also during weekends and evenings. And with that, we also hope to reduce the environmental impact. We placed this pool in 2 sites. At IKEA, we placed 7 vehicles during 2 test periods of 6 months each. And at Botkyrka, we had these vehicles for 9 months, just 1 test period. At IKEA, we were placed in 5 different working places, and at Botkyrka in 2 different working places. We collected data with interviews, workshops, and surveys. We interviewed each caretakers 3 times, before, during, and after. And we had 3 workshops with each caretaker groups, before, during, and after. We interviewed about 30 daytime users. So we have a lot of data. And all this material that we worked on during the time, we fed back into the stakeholder groups. That was Martin from Gröna Bilister and Hertz and Renault and Ecotraffic and ITRL here. So during the time, we also made some changes at the service, or sometimes we had to also do some things at the car and take necessary actions. So it was living all the time, and we like tune the concept during the test periods. So how did it go? Here's the data from the booking system. At IKEA, we had 134 registered users, but just half of them was actual users that had booked the vehicle and used it at least once. And as you can see here, we have 16 caretakers at 14 vehicles, and because at each period we had to replace 1 caretaker because a person moved and lost her ability to charge a vehicle. At Botkyrka, we had 33 registered users at 3 vehicles, but just half of them also here were actual users. But some of these users are really heavy users that used it a lot. The highest usage was during the launch periods in both IKEA and Botkyrka. For example, at IKEA in October, when we launched their first period, it was about 48 bookings per month. But during winter time, sometimes the vehicle was standing with no usage at all. It was too cold or too snowy, we thought it was not safe. And we also had, the first time we had to wait for winter tire for a couple of weeks or something like that. So that also lowered the usage during winter times. But quite interesting was also that the last 2 weeks, when we were going to close the project at IKEA, the usage increased a lot. And people was emailing me like, oh, so people have pre-booked it for many times, and I can't book it now. So we had to change the rules in the last 2 weeks, that they couldn't have more than 2 bookings in advance. So that was like they suddenly realized that it was not going to stay forever. It was going to end, this project. As you can see here, the most common distances to drive was from up to 5 kilometers. We have some of these more, about 20 kilometers here. It is the caretakers who take the vehicle home back and forth. But this solution is best suited for these shorter driving distances. We could also in the booking system write what we used the vehicles for. And at IKEA we could see here that the most common usage was lunches. And that was also particular for this service, that we said that it's okay to use it for private errands. And there was really a need that IKEA had, because many people comes to IKEA from long distance buses and trains, and they are restricted to their office, and sometimes they don't have any good place to go to eat. So that was really a need they had. While in Botkyrka, the most common usage was business errands. And that was because one of these departments that these twists were placed, they worked with workplace visits. And they had no good way to go there. They were said to take the bus, but it took too long time. So everyone took their private car to do this. So there was a need of this kind of solution for these business trips. And this pattern, you can also see the 2 cultures in these 2 different workplaces. Since at IKEA, people felt that it was okay to use these vehicles for private errands and private things. But at Botkyrka, even we had stated that it was okay, they didn't feel that. They couldn't feel that the bosses said that it was okay to use this for private errands. So private lunches comes quite low down. And we could also see that in the interviews. The usage was also dependent on the availability of the vehicles. And as I said, so we had sometimes every vehicle was standing for the exchange of tires, but they had also some other problems, and one electric problems with one of the vehicles. And so we have also problem with the handbrake and so on. So of course it was affected by that, but also it was interesting that the caretaker concept that we invented to increase the usage also decreased the usage somewhere, because they couldn't really trust that the vehicle was going to be there when they booked it. Since the caretakers had their own private life, sometimes they had to pick up the kids earlier from school, they were sick, or they had to go on business trips and so on. So they felt that I can't trust that the vehicle really are there. So the concept, we can't say if it increased or decreased the usage of a vehicle, but it didn't work exactly that we wanted to. I can also tell you about this Nisse. We had in each pool a person that we call Nisse. That was one allt I allo, that someone always could phone, or who should go out if there's some problem with the car, the vehicles and so on. And they were very important for the whole project. So all these interviews and we have analyzed, and now we're just going to show very quickly what they thought about the Twisty. Was that quite interesting, because that's also did they accept this Twisty or not? The persons that we interviewed, they thought it was fun and nice to drive it, and very simple to drive it. It's just to bara tuta and köra, like someone said. They thought it was quiet and they liked it, but they also, of course, thought that there was a problem for the safety for people who walked around. It was easy to park. And it had a great comfort, like some people said, and it increased the speed, the comfort. And they really liked that they didn't have to go to the gas station. They thought it was cheap to drive, and of course this was these Botkyrka people that didn't have to take their private car, but also these caretakers that could feel that it affected their the money that others spend on gas. And we also thought that we could bring some things on the vehicles, and that was if you compare the bikes. But that was something we didn't want to. We didn't want them to replace the bikes for this vehicle. We wanted to replace the private car, but of course that's a side effect of it. And also that the vehicle caused attention. The users that we interviewed, they liked that. Many people asked them when they stopped at, for example, when you're going to shopping, people asked them what was this vehicle, and we had to we wanted to talk about the project. But of course, I could also scare some users away that didn't want this attention. And they really liked that it was a sustainable alternative. What we were skeptical about this Twizy was the safety. They felt it was felt unsafe to go on these big roads, and they have also a problem with condense on the windows when it was damp or rainy outside. Since it has no heating and no fan, it really lowered the sight. It could feel quite scary. And they also felt that some of them also felt that it has a feeling of low quality, since we had the problem with handbrake, sometimes the doors sized and so. Yeah, and the comfort, they thought that it was cold to drive, and that rain and wind came into the cabin, especially in the back seats, passenger seats. It was really windy. And they thought also that the noise came into the cabin. And some thought also that it was too small for two persons, two people, and you couldn't bring stuff. So they needed warm clothes, and that quite interesting also that people who take the private car to work, they maybe don't have their warm clothes with them. The people who have the warm clothes is the one who's walking and bicycling. So you really need to get them to change behavior to bring these things to use this vehicle. So what did they think about the service? Yeah, they thought it was very flexible and comfortable as a service, and also that this was it simplified many of their errands, that daily visits and so on. And also like that they have got more travel options, that it was not just a bike and a bus, that you get another way to travel. And also that this service also met some of these needs that we had, for example, for lunches, that we talked about. And they also thought it was good because there were, but I think that's different sides of this, of course, but they thought that the vehicle was available. But this was maybe not a good result for the service, for the project, because we want the usage, a higher usage. And also that for the caretakers, it saved a lot of money, and they saved time. They didn't have to take a bus to meetings. And they had also reserved parking spaces close to the office. That also saved a lot of time. They didn't have to look for parking spaces. The caretakers almost always in the interviews said that they thought it was too bad that not more day users used this vehicle. We had some really heavy day users that used it a lot, but we had hoped for a higher usage. But one of these things could also be that at IKEA there were not a big need of these, but just some people who needed it during lunches, but they didn't travel that much between offices. And also at Botkyrka, the people who made these workplaces visits, they mainly did that on the way home or on the way to office. So this service was not applicable for that, because you had to leave a vehicle back before you could go home. So they still took the private car sometimes. And they also thought that the system requires a responsible behaviour from the caretakers, that they really go to work and they leave it on time and so on. And they had some problems also with the support desk in the beginning, before they learn this TWISI and so on. And they also thought that this required planning in advance, and that's particular for the caretakers. They needed to plan. If they were going to business trip, they had to fix some stand-in for them as caretaker. And it required a big commitment as well. And some people also thought it was complicated with too many procedures, and I think that's mainly about they thought it was quite awkward to do this registration. So we also supported, in the end, we also supported people to register to the service. Yes, I'm finished. And now Mia's going to talk about what did we learn.
What else did we learn?
What else did we learn?
Because we learned a lot, like you explained, about the vehicle and the attitudes to this particular vehicle, and the service and the whole product service system also. And we've cut out a few things. I mean, from a 3-year project, obviously you learn a lot. So we brought a couple of things with us here, which are things that we've also shared together with the other stakeholders in the project. And something that we have looked at is the caretakers who were involved in this research project, and they were actually almost involved as fellow researchers, you could say. They were helping us by living in this living lab experiment type of thing. So when we analyzed a bit more of these people who decided to participate in the project, what were they driven by? Why did they want to join the project? Why did they want to test this TWISI and this product service system? And what we found is that some of these caretakers, they joined the project and they were motivated by functional values. Functional values. Are we going? Functional values like being very practical, helping me out in my day-to-day life as a practical solution, and also earning money, basically. They felt like they were earning money, not having to pay for petrol or diesel in their private car. Some people were driven by technical interest in electric vehicles, basically, and just interested in vehicles generally. There was this one caretaker who had motorbike, snow scooter, a couple of cars, and of course was going to be a caretaker of the TWISI. So there were quite a few of those people. And then we also had those who were sustainability driven, who joined the project because they felt either from a personal point of view or that they had a sustainability engagement in their work role, that they wanted to show that there are sustainable mobility solutions out there. So we had different values here that drove them into the project and that motivated them. When we looked further, what we did see though for these caretakers is that the everyday life, everyday practicalities is something that are prioritized. No matter how sustainability driven you are, there is still your everyday life that you worry about and that you need to sort out. So there were things like, sort of, if you were shopping at several stores, for example, first going to IKEA and then I need to pick up something else at another store, that would be a problem because the TWISI, you're not able to lock the vehicle. So you can't leave any stuff there, so you really need to think about, okay, if I'm going to shop, if I'm going to pick up something first, I need to do that and carry that with me whilst I go into IKEA and do my shopping. Or Jenny mentioned also like fitting bulky stuff. If I'm going to pick somebody up, I have an extra spare seat in my Twizy, but if that person comes at the train station and has a lot of luggage with me, it doesn't work, because the Twizy won't fit a big suitcase in as well. So I would need to take my private car. Or more on the service side, this feeling of responsibility, or when I'm traveling abroad, sort of the system rules and the system features. If somebody of the caretaker was going for a trip to China, for example, at IKEA, they would be away for 2 weeks. What was I going to do with the Twizy? I would have to leave it to somebody else. I'd have to find a temporary caretaker that could help me out. So these practicalities really affected also how to think about this product service system. And what we followed and what we were interested in is this: when we did this disruption in their, you could say, unsustainable practices. If we say that it's an unsustainable practice to take your privately owned fossil fuel car to work every day. So we disrupted that practice, and by that disruption, this caused reflections. And of course, the research activities that we carried out, as Jenny mentioned, the interviews we did with the caretakers, these workshops we did, one of the points with that was also to bring up the reflections and make them talk about what they felt, which we looked at. So this researcher role that we had was both to provoke these reflections and also to sort of try to understand the reflections. And when we sort of compacted some of these insights and some of these understanding if you're building a mobility service such as this, what we've tested in KTH Mobility Pool, what is required? Well, for a product service system to be used, an integrated thinking is required. This comes very handy being here at the Integrated Transport Research Labs, and both of us being based in the corridor of integrated product development. So kind of obviously you could say, yes, an integrated approach is necessary. What is this integrated approach to us, having now studied and followed the KTH Mobility Pool project? Well, what we can say is that it's not enough to place a number of light electric vehicles and connect them with a booking service in terms of placing them out there at the work site. We need to also connect these three parts of material, infrastructure and competence, and we need to support all of these and also the linkages between them. And let me explain these three. So if we think about the material aspect, what is required? The material in this case includes both the Twizy, the physical vehicle, but also the booking system you can consider as a material, the IT system. And both these two parts need to work. So the vehicle needs to work also all year round, at all seasons. Or you need the possibility for a garage to keep the Twizy warm. The main problem was actually not, I would say, not being scared of driving in the snow. Some of the caretakers really enjoyed that. They were taking it out and spinning it on the ice and thought it was fantastic. The main problem was this condensation in the window where you couldn't see anything. So they brought out these wipes that they were trying to clean. And if you then had a very short distance, nothing just happened, so you had to clean all the time to travel with it. So this all season for the Twizy is a challenge. The IT system needs to work on several different platforms. And what we did now was we used this Sunfleet booking system. We used that with some modifications. And within the IKEA organization and within the Botkyrka organization, they had other booking systems, and they had also more systems connected to, for example, their Outlook bookings, and we discussed a lot about that, being able to connect it. There is a lot that can be done here, and we're testing this forward actually in a new project here from ITRL at Scania, where we're bringing some of these learnings forward and doing some stuff about the booking system. We also need then close connections between existing booking systems. If you are going to use a separate booking system, you need them to talk to each other. And a registration in terms of booking systems needs to be so simple that everybody can use it. This was not the case, we can say, at neither IKEA or Botkyrka. So basically we had this Nisse helping out registering users, and Jenny helping out a lot, sitting over there and like getting emails and helping out to register people in the system. And this feels like a kind of an obvious thing to work forward with and just make it easier. And vehicles needs to be placed strategically, meaning that both this having reserved parking seats is a very good thing in workspaces where parking is a problem. So that creates a sort of benefit, but also the parking spaces being visible, kind of obviously, so that you remember and see the Tweezy and connect to it. So this material aspect goes both with the vehicle and with the service. And then if we look at more, you can call this sort of infrastructure, and that this could be both physically in terms of an infrastructure consisting of charging opportunities. So how do we charge the vehicle? And can you charge it at the workplace? That's one story, which we had at Botkyrka, for example. We could actually charge the Tweezys at the workplace, which was critical because there were so many employees within the Botkyrka municipality that lived in apartments where they don't have charging possibilities. And so if you live in like either hyresrätt or a bostadsrättsförening, you wouldn't have the charging possibilities. It was easier in Älmhult with people living in detached houses in villas and that sort of thing. That was easier to find people with charging possibilities. So obviously you need an infrastructure of charging and dedicated parking spaces, as I just mentioned also. Also, if we think about infrastructure as something which is maybe not physical, but about rules and regulations or even norms, sort of how we, what we accept, the rules around using the system, that needs to be also very clear. And even though, as Jenny mentioned earlier, even though for this project we said the rules are that you can use it at lunchtime and private errands, the norms, you could say, or the different cultures in the two different workplaces, they were very different. So they kind of listen to the rules or not listen to the rules, if you see what I mean. So having these rules penetrating into norms, that's a story to work with. And a product service system needs to be visible and well communicated, as well as have clear support and to become normal, you could say, so that it's normal to use it. And finally, in terms of competences, the user needs to develop their competences regarding both handling the vehicle, so spinning it on the ice or being okay driving it on a road where 70 kilometers per hour is the limit, but also handling the booking system. So if you're used to one booking system, you need the competence to be able to use this, in this case, the Sunfleet booking system, and understand when am I going to use the calendar view and when am I going to use this view and how do I use it. The caretakers also needed competences and knowledges to deal with the ambassador role that they stepped into. Most of them were okay with this, and that was partly why they joined the project. They wanted to to show off, and they liked sort of being a bit extrovert, but some of them were not like that. And for them, they needed some extra support in sort of handling this ambassador role. And the caretakers also needed the system to work with their everyday life puzzles, as I mentioned previously, how to fit in this everyday situations. And what we saw was that some caretakers, they bent the rules to fit their private lives, basically, which is interesting when you're doing research, because like all these things that didn't work out, they are super interesting. Things that went wrong is the where we found it most interesting. So this was just a short little glimpse into some things that we learned, and that we have written some articles about it, and we're writing some more, we hope. And we open up the floor for questions with thanks.
We have a couple of questions from the web streaming.
Oh,
start with them.
gosh.
The first one is if you have considered to change the rules in the booking system to address the issues described with the caretakers and their experiences.
Yeah, we had to do that from the beginning.
We did.
Yeah, from the beginning we wanted them to leave the weekly from 8:30 to stand to 4 o'clock or something, or 5 o'clock. But from first meeting with the caretakers, we realized that it didn't work. So they just put up their own rules, and they wanted to leave it and pick it up. And they just showed that in the booking system, so they could be flexible on that also. We just booked it in advance, so the day users could see when it was booked for the caretakers.
And then there's also a question of how many users change from coming by private car to this service.
I just know about one person, I think, but he really changed behavior because he didn't want to take his car. He thought it was expensive, and his son also needed his car, but he needed it for work, to go on these workplace visits. So he was really happy about this solution. But that's the only one I know about that's really changed, apart from the caretakers, of course. Do you?
No, I know who you mean. So not that many.
Not that many.
Two more questions from the web stream. What was the reason that you chose the Renault Twizy instead of a kind of regular car? I mean, all these problems with not having the locks or the heating and so on that comes with it.
It was many reasons. One was actually what it was this call is that we wanted that Energimyndigheten was funding this kind of research, but we wanted to disrupt this system. We wanted to have some challenging things to test and see if it would work, because this is so much more sustainable to use this kind of vehicles instead of driving big heavy cars or vehicles for short distances. So, yeah.
No, we wanted to test a light electric vehicle, and the Twizy is, classed like that, rather than testing a car or electric car. So we wanted to push the limit here.
And we think actually that it works. That it was cold was not a big issue, like you said. The problem was the sight, the condensation in the window. And I think yes, that if more people really have tried it, they should realize that it is not so cold to drive that. I drove it a whole Christmas for some years ago. It's not a problem at all. So it's just in the back seat. But the problem it could be is that they have not the clothes that you need at workplace. That's one problem, of course. So it works for shorter distances.
And then last question here from the web. What role did Hertz play during the pilots?
Hertz and Sunfleet is the same company, so they were in charge of the booking system, and Sunfleet helped us also collect the data.
They had a big role, since they also were very good in this service development, and also supported us with insurances with the vehicles and So they had a really big role in this project.
Mm.
And they made a lot of learnings also that they have applied to new projects that they have used the Renault instead. So they use this concept now, but have changed the Twizy to Renault.
Mm. Which was launched just quite recently, where they launched to 6 different municipalities in southern Sweden. The Zoe as the vehicle, and then together with people working in municipalities. Have you heard about this? Maybe? No? Okay, so they're employees of these 6 different municipalities. They get to use the Zoe privately. They bring the Zoe to the workplace, and it's used during daytime as a pool for people in the municipality. And then they bring the vehicle, the Zoe, back home and use it at home. The idea is that when it's used in the for work, their cost is reduced by the amount that it's used during daytime. So it's a shared service during daytime within the municipality. So it's interesting, the ways forward, and then also, as I mentioned here, we're bringing this forward to Scania, people employed at Scania, and there we're also testing electric bikes for sharing instead. So we're both going up in vehicle and down in vehicle, if you could call it that. Martin?
Yeah. When listening to this presentation, I get interested in like how much were you able to plan in advance, and how much did the project organization develop over time? Like, were there new challenges that made different stakeholders perhaps take different roles than expected or planned?
I would say the overall structure was planned in advance, with a sort of almost a year before the setup, and then a full year, a bit more, when we were in the during phase, and then like a year in the after phase, you could say. And but then the stakeholders' engagement varied across this 3-year period.
Yeah. And some replaced because we changed working places, and so also we had for IKEA, for example.
Yeah.
But then it was just more detailed tuning, I think. But the overall project, our different roles as researchers and the stakeholders.
But then, like in this during phase, together with the caretakers, there were a number of problems that arose, and some of them we did not think about before, that we had to solve. Like people getting divorced and urgently having to move out, and having to be replaced them because they couldn't have the responsibility. Things like that.
But that didn't affect the project, carrying out the project, not like the roles.
Yeah. So since we started the IKEA project for 6 months before we started it in Botkyrka, we did some learnings also that we changed for the Botkyrka. For example, that they thought it was very difficult to register to the system. So in Botkyrka, the Nisse helped them to register. So that few things that we had to change.
That we adapted to.
I can add something. If you see of the stakeholders of the project, not only the users, the team was very engaged and flexible. So when a problem come up, it's someone in the team, and maybe not the one who was actually in charge of the issue were solving a problem. So we were very problem solving focused during all the projects, the project time.
Yeah.
And also
so part of the success of the project is how we work. If you have a project structure that is not flexible, it's difficult to address the problem that a living lab project can appear.
We could also say from the learning of this first test period at IKEA, and then hitting some difficulties when we were launching in Botkyrka municipality, we realized that we needed more support from Hertz. So we had a person much more available, just making sure the vehicles worked, the handbrake, for example, and that was again like adapting and problem solving here.
And then there were also some external issues that we didn't control that are very important for the success of the project.
Yeah.
For example, in IKEA, they're so big, so 7 trees is nothing. So in each of the 21 companies in Älmhult. So of course it's difficult to get a booking because there are so many employees. But if you put like 10 times more trees on the place, you will get a lot of bookings. That's for sure. Another thing was the place of the parking, the possibilities of charging, for example, and also in the case of IKEA is that still they have these big parking lots available for free. So it didn't require the users for any change at all because you have always the free parking. But if you restrict the parking possibilities, for example, you will have a bigger change in the behavior of the employees. So next time, if we try it in IKEA, well, we close down the big parking lot to the half, for example, then I'm sure we will have more usage on the system.
We're looking at carrying this out in different new experiments that Martin is going to be doing. Yes?
I'd like to tie into this, and maybe you can comment. Am I too optimistic? You discovered a lot of issues. They are interrelated. Some of them are very complex, and so forth. However, I still get the impression that some of the issues can actually be fixed. And my thinking is there seems to be some critical mass tipping point issues. If you're good enough and go beyond that threshold, it will get a positive dynamic on itself. Something like there was a limited number of vehicles, and that will stop, and that's a negative feedback loop. But if you go beyond that, and that's a logistic issue, then I think you will get the positive feedback loops and effects. And this is what I mean with. But am I too optimistic?
I think for some users should use it, but some still have a big threshold before they accept the vehicle. I think they had decided that it shouldn't work, that it was too cold and so on. But after some time, maybe,
I think also a bit of it is to, from a user perspective, to be able to try it out makes you discover some new values. So this first slide I showed with the 4 different circles, it might be that you joined this project for some reasons, being motivated by some values, but you actually changed values once you started to discover. And I've been particularly interested in looking at it from a sustainability point of view, and we saw one of the caretakers who didn't know so much about sustainability in the beginning, and at the end really talked about sustainability as a driving force for her. So I think it's also about thresholds can also be about the values and how you engage.
And all the users became more positive about electric vehicles, all of them. So our suggestion is to challenge or to force them to try the service, to really get them to try it so they could reflect on it.
Benoit?
Yes, the figures you showed regarding the amount of users, is it the people who were registered, and then you showed the actual users? Do you have some data, for instance, showing that all the people who actually tried the service came back to it several times or many times, or do we know if many of them just tried it once and gave it up?
It varied.
Okay.
It varied, yeah. It was some people who just tried it once and they didn't like the vehicle since they thought that they became dirty or they didn't felt safe. But that was a few, I think. And then it was some very heavy users that used it a lot. So it varied.
I think it's also back to like the threshold we were talking about, that there is a different threshold level depending on the users. For some people, they just I won't try it, then they try it, and then it switches their mind, their mindset at once. And for some others, they maybe will need to come back to it like twice, 3 times in different conditions, etc., to really adopt it. But it's tricky. It's really personal.
And some people wanted to use, but never took the chance, and never took the chance to register because I do it later. And,
You wanted to reduce the private vehicle use. Have you measured that, or how does this concept actually reduce that in general?
We haven't measured that explicitly now. Just in interviews, but we can't see that.
But how would it, just conceptually, how would it reduce it then? I mean, is it that, okay, you have a private, if you're not a ward, then you have a private vehicle there on site where you can do small trips. But how does this reduce your private vehicle use back and forth to work?
For example, if you bring your vehicle to just use it during daytime, that was the issue for some users at Botkyrka, for example.
So the errands are kind of reduced.
That was one of the ideas.
Instead taking that, using public transport or cycling or walking, but feeling secure that when I'm doing this stuff during my workday, I can use the system.
You also mentioned payment. So how was the structure? Who was paying what and how much? And
the caretakers paid 500 Swedish crowns each month to Hertz for the vehicles.
And the regular users, the pool users?
They didn't pay it.
No, it's free.
Do you have any statistics about how many times people tried to book and not succeeded, for example?
No.
Okay.
But that's an interesting one that we're carrying out in Södertälje, actually.
So basically this service quality, I mean that's a big issue. Right?
Ida. Förlåt, det var du också. But go ahead.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much. It is very interesting project and the presentation was very interesting also. I also had chance to talk with Liridona about this project, so in that sense I also have some kind of overview. Thank you for that. One of the things that we discussed, I just want to get your view on that also, that since I work on data science and we had a talk about having an opportunity to monitor your users in real time or getting reports about their real usage complementary to your interviews. Do you think that kind of a mechanism in your research would be helpful for you to take decisions not only on interviews but the data and also on time instead of waiting to...
We have talked about that, and I think it's very interesting since if you have interviews after workshops, it also means that the users decides what we talk about. We could miss a lot of things that happened, urgent things that was good and not good. They might want to be, seems like it was better than it was or worse than it was. So it's very interesting to have this real time feedback.
How are you considering to add this kind of perspective also in your future researches? Liridona
are working on that, so we're going to try to apply for that kind of
in this
studies.
project at Scania, we are looking at the on-demand and in various ways visualizing where different parts of the service system is in real time in terms of where are these vehicles. So we're working with Verdict, who's a stakeholder in that and partner in that project. But then there could also be a lot more done in terms of the design of that, which I'm not sure how we'll be able to do in that particular project, but that would be interesting to carry out. And I think personally, in particular, in terms of sustainability aspects also, because sustainability is sort of not, it's very complex and it's not so easy to grasp for people. So there's a huge potential in also visualizing that, making it more able to grasp. You've been waiting for a long time.
I think one of the most surprising things for me about the presentation was that the majority of the use is for journeys between 0 and 1 kilometer.
Yeah.
Was that something that's expected? Because for me that seems like a distance that's better done by walking or cycling.
Yeah.
But then also, do you have any data on whether those journeys were things that were being, were they planned, or were they being done just because the car was there, or were you replacing walking and cycling by having these cars there?
I think some of these is 0 as well, but they booked it, but they never used it. I guess some of them. Lidona has this data more in detail. But that was also a problem, that they replaced the bike or walking and took the vehicle instead. And that was not the effect we wanted, of course. Because we just wanted to try it. It was fun to try it. Of course, that made a positive effect. That we tried it and realized that it works. But it was used for very short distances as well.
Some of the caretakers talked about that also, that now that I have the vehicle, I use it actually even more.
Yeah.
Yes, we certainly saw some negative, you can say, negative aspects also.
We could go back and look at that, because many people have written their purposes in the trip. So we could have a look at that actually.
It's just interesting that there seems to be a big demand for a journey between 0 and 1 kilometer. It seems interesting.
I think we're out of time now. We're actually 5 minutes past time, so we'll end the kind of formal session here. Maybe you have some time to stay a few minutes if there's more questions.
Yeah, sure. Yes, of course.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks for
listening.
doing it.